Hi, Mikkel.
Hi, Paulina. Thanks very much for having me here today.
Hey, thanks for coming to my show. Where are you calling from?
So I'm actually Canadian, but I live in Panama right now.
That's very interesting. That's actually why I wanted to chat with you today is about the intricacies of being a digital nomad. And is it actually a good thing or a bad thing after a while? So that's going to be the core
Well,
topic of today.
well, I will have to stop you right there because I'm actually not a digital nomad. What I am is an expat. So I'm someone just like you who lives in another country full time and builds their life there. Now, I've been doing it for 20 years and I've lived in 8 different countries. But I have a house here, I have my books, I have my office, I have all of my stuff here. Traditionally, a digital nomad is someone who has their laptop and a backpack or a suitcase and they travel from place to place. But for me, I moved to Panama about 5 or 6 months ago, and this is home. You know, I was at home in Abu Dhabi for 8 years, and I was at home in Australia for 3 years. Yes, I travel a lot. Yes, I travel extensively, and I've been to more than 100 countries. But really, I'm an expat.
Interesting distinction that you're making. So that means expat just has a bigger backpack, sort of like a cargo ship full of your things, right?
Well, I did bring a cargo ship. I brought a shipping container when I moved here. But I think the difference is that with a lot of digital nomads, they come in and it's very temporary and they know it's temporary. And they'll often stay in just an Airbnb or a hostel or a hotel or anything like that. I either rent or buy my house. I incorporate myself into the community. I have friends here. I brought my whole family with me. I really moved here. You know, I have, and this is another important distinction that maybe we can get to today is I have a visa to live here and to work here, and I can stay here as long as I want. With a lot of digital nomads, they enter in as a tourist visa on a tourist visa. I am a full permanent resident in Panama. I have the right to live here, to work here, to come and go from the country whenever I want. And if I stay long enough, I'm even qualified for citizenship. So after 5 years, I could become a Panamanian citizen if I so choose.
So out of all the countries that you lived in, because we're entrepreneurs and we are jumpy. We start one thing and we want to jump to another. And maybe you're just saying that you are moving here, but maybe a year later you'll be saying, I'm now moving to Thailand. So I know you lived in Thailand as well, in Malaysia and Middle East somewhere. Is that right? Like, where else did you live longer than 6 months?
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So I lived in Guatemala for about a half a year. I've lived in Australia for 3 years, 1 year in New Zealand, a year in Singapore. I lived in the Arctic for 366 days. I lived in the ski resorts in Western Canada for 18 months. Where else? I lived in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi for 8 years, and now I live here in Panama. Oh, and I lived in the United States for a little while as well, in around Los Angeles and Venice Beach area.
So it seems like in your heart you have this big drive to move from place to place. So do you not think that it may come to you that you will feel like you want to move again somewhere else after you've settled in Panama?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that Panama is a little bit different for us. This was the first time that I had ever moved with a family. So my wife, my daughter, and my mother came with me this time. So we all lived together in the UAE, but this was the first time we actually moved together as a family. Like I met my wife in the Middle East, for example, and my daughter was born in Abu Dhabi. And I believe that Panama, in one way or another, will always be a part of my life. I really love it here. I have opportunities here that were not available to me in the Middle East. For example, if I could live in the UAE for 50 years and I would never become a citizen. I had a special visa and it had to be renewed every 2 to 3 years. And there were a lot of restrictions and it just was not a permanent solution. Even though I enjoyed my 8 years there, I thought it was fantastic. I really watched the country grow and boom, and I did my small part in helping that accomplish that. I think Panama is a little bit different for me. But saying all of that, you know, I would love to live in Thailand. I have a very close friend and business partner who lives in Portugal. You know, maybe I'll get my residency there. My wife is from mainland China, so, you know, we have houses there and apartments there. So maybe we'll spend half the year or a third of the year in China. The overall goal is the hub and spoke model. And I suppose this is why I like being an expat more than the digital nomads, is I always have a base to come back to. Now, as time goes on, I'd like to expand these bases, and I'd like to have several bases and spend 3 months or 4 months or 6 months in one place. But I think Panama going forward will always be one of these bases.
It's interesting. Right away, a question comes to my mind. What about cultural integrity? Okay, I was born in Lithuania, lived there for 20 years, then moved to Canada, lived there, traveled around the world, blah, blah, and then lived in Canada 15 years. And now I live in Turkey, also became a home a year ago. And I understand the complexity of, there's no belonging somewhere anymore. And then my heart just keeps wanting to belong somewhere. And now I'm attaching myself to Turkey as much as I can. And I'm trying to find those matches that are, to my personality, to my food, to the likings, personal things. So do you find a lot of cultural things that are good match for you as a person in Panama?
Well, things are a little bit differently. I totally understand what you're saying, and identifying with a state or with a country. For me, I'm Canadian by birth. I don't feel Canadian. I don't feel like I did when I was a teenager. I don't identify with being Canadian. I don't have national pride or anything like that. More, my community is other people like me, other expats who have decided to move overseas and make something of their life in a different fashion. I'd have been very happy. I would have loved it if I could have just lived in Canada my whole life and married my high school sweetheart and grown up and had a normal job and just been a happy, regular guy. But for me, that wasn't the case. That just wasn't, it didn't speak to me. I wasn't happy there. For me, I had to start traveling and I had to start exploring and understanding these different cultures. And all these different places that I've lived in have helped shape me into the person that I am today. So, I hate the word citizen of the world. It's so cliche and dorky, but, my people are other expats. All my friends, my closest friends here in Panama are Russian, and I have a lot of South African friends here, and I have American friends, and I have Portuguese, and we all we speak different languages. In my house, every single day there is always 3 languages spoke at all times: Spanish, Chinese, and English. So I like this type of dynamic. I like the international. We eat different food every single day of the week. We watch movies in different languages, in different programs and different types. I like that type of variety. I don't want just the one little culture that I grew up with. I had that for 17 years. That's fine. That's enough time with that. Now I'm looking to explore and to understand other cultures. Does that kind of answer your question in a roundabout way?
It does. Actually, I just realized that in my life I had similar experience. In Canada, I lived for 15 years, and you would think in 15 years you would adapt to the Canadian ways, and have a lot of Canadian friends, even though I went to university there and had jobs where you have a lot of opportunities to make friends with locals. But I was always friends only with other people who are like me, from out of country. And I had trouble to actually connecting, and there's this cultural difference between the Eastern Europeans being rude and straightforward and Canadians having a shell, that you have to slowly break in time. There's this difference, and it's very hard to become friends with someone. You have to really knock on that shell for a long time. So I had problems with that. And in Turkey as well, I find other Eastern Europeans who marry Turkish guys, and then here I am. That is very interesting observation that you said you are now surrounded with a circle of friends who are just like you. What about the time? You're there only 5-6 months now, right? But what do you see in the future when your kids, maybe you'll have more kids that will go to school, you will sort of, adapt to the local lifestyle?
Okay, well, first let's take one step back, because I just want to make a comment on what you said. Okay. And basically, I think it's really important to understand the difference with expats. I don't know how to say this. When you have a local and you grow, or say this, how to say this. I still know the same people that I went to high school with. I still know the same people that I went to primary school with and kindergarten with, and that's great. I love them. They're amazing. We have now 37 years of history together. You know, it would be really unfair for me to bring my wife into a situation like that. Like, how would she adapt to this 37 years of history that I have with someone else? So, and it's the same thing. Like, I wouldn't want to go to China and go back to her hometown. I'd be at such an unfair disadvantage. And I think that's a problem with breaking into the local culture a lot of times. To get the local friends, they've known each other for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. And now you knowing them for 2 months or 4 months. And often you don't speak the language. And so it can be difficult. But when you're an expat and you have other expat friends, you're all kind of on even footing. And you're all recreating yourself and you're deciding who you want to be. And no one knows all your past and your history. And like, I'm not escaping for anything, but I do like that I can put myself forward. I can put my best self forward. And someone's not going to remember something stupid I did when I was 17 years old and I was drunk. You know, like, it's just life. It's part of life. So I think that's kind of the difficulty that maybe you have and some people have when they move overseas, if they're trying to get involved in the expat community. Now, to talk about schooling and my daughter and how she's going to deal with these types of things, I think it's a little bit different because I will homeschool my daughter, either homeschooling or world schooling or non-schooling, whichever acronym or not acronym, whatever saying you want to use. So we won't have that type of thing. But there's a really interesting book, and it talks about third culture kids. So I'm from one country. My wife is from another country. My daughter's born in a third country. Now we live in Panama. She's going to have a mixture of all these. So she's not Chinese and she's not Canadian. She's something else. She's a new culture. And I think that that'll be really interesting to watch and see how that progresses and how she does with all that.
You know, it's interesting. I have 2 kids. So one has lived in Canada for 3 years and the other only for 1 year. So once we moved to Turkey, now they speak Turkish with no accent, but they speak English with an accent. You know, we only live here for 1 year, but they adapted so quickly because it's just their age for learning the languages, you know. And I am Lithuanian. I don't even have a chance now to put in a third language over there. To, you know, they know a few words, but it would be a chaos. So it's interesting. My brother lives in Canada, but he's Lithuanian, and his kids speak Lithuanian with huge Canadian accent. You know, the American accent thing, Canadian accent. They can't pronounce the proper. You know, we say labor, they're labor. They can't pronounce the R's and they can't roll them. So it's really interesting how kids sort of take in faster than we do. You know, we as expats, we still are part of whoever we were born as, but we bring them into this new culture, and being kids, they just adapt to it so much more intensely than we do. It's amazing to me.
Well, I think it's also a lot of times how much energy and effort you put into it. Now, if you lived in Canada for so many years, I'm sure you really had to incorporate yourself in the culture. But I've seen a lot of people who come to, say, Panama, for example, and they've been here for 3 or 4 years and maybe speak 10 words of Spanish. For me, this is very bizarre. Like, I don't understand why they would do something like this. It's like they go out of their way to make a divide between themselves and the culture that they've moved to and the people that they're supposed to be incorporating with. For me, I study Spanish 3 hours a day, every day, for 5 months. You know, so my Spanish is actually pretty good right now. I think that you have to put effort. You can't expect, and this goes for everybody, you can't expect that everything is just going to be easy. This is a lot of work. It definitely is. But the rewards are just so massive. Like, I just love it. I think it's just such an interesting and exciting way to live your life.
Now I'll ask you a question. Why Panama? Because I've seen Panama on the cruise ships that I've been working at, and they are registered there because of tax savings and things like that. So what's the drive that drove you there, and like, why did you fall in love with it to call it home? And you're saying, that's it, that's my home. I will bring my shipping container of all of my things here.
Okay, well, there's several reasons. So for my business, like you said before, we're both entrepreneurs. My business is working in the offshore markets. So I work in taxation, asset protection, banking, accounting, all of these things generate surrounding the offshore markets. And I'm a writer. I'm a writer and a marketer, and I'm a published author. And these are the topics. So Panama is really like the epicenter of this space, this niche. So every day that I go out and I have dinner with friends and friends here, they're all lawyers and accountants, and I'm meeting all these really interesting people. So that's reason number one. It's good for my business. Number two, the visa process here is incredibly easy. You can do something called the Friendly Nations visa, and we can get into the details if you like. I'm not sure. But basically, if you are one of 50 different nationalities in the world, you can apply for a Friendly Nations visa. And it just means that you can become a permanent resident here. You have to show a certain amount of income. It's an economic visa. So they want you to either build a business or invest in the country or buy real estate or something like this. And it's a very easy visa for a Canadian because we're one of the 50 nationalities. Now, my wife is not one of the 50 nationalities. However, I'm able to sponsor her. So there's definitely ways around that. So that's reason number two. Number three is because I already had a bit of a background in Spanish and I wanted to get my Spanish a lot better. And we looked at where we were raising our daughter and what she would speak as a third language. And in an Arabic country, women as entrepreneurs don't have the same opportunities as some other nationalities, some other countries in the world. In a place like Latin America, a woman can go very, very far with building a business or in politics or become a CEO. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen in Arabic countries. It does, but it is a lot more difficult, and it's more difficult for a foreigner to break into those markets. So we had to look at all of these different things and make a decision what we wanted. But Panama, it's a beautiful country. It's a really, 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 really high standard of living and a really low cost of living. Like we go out for the fanciest dinners I've ever had in my life. Like I swear they'd be like 2 Michelin star restaurants. We drink all night long, wine and specialty cocktails and everything like that. 2, 3 families, 10 people, and you get the bill and it's like $70, $80 per family. Like it's nothing. In the UAE, it'd be $500, $800 per family for this type of thing. And it wouldn't even be as nice a quality, So like, I love it here. I think it's really great.
But when I'm hearing what you're saying, if I'm hearing right, the choices were made more like, when you're writing benefits and the negatives of the decision, but they're not really driven by the practical aspects, like the little practical everyday things. For example, why do I love living in Turkey? Why did we decide? Well, because organic food is available from around the corner. It's a small town and not a big city with a lot of traffic. We walk everywhere. We can afford a house on the water, the first house on the waterfront. And all of it, like the nature, the feeling more to the back to earth than in the car all the time, like in Canada, and it's just like,
yep.
Such a good feeling in the heart for it. So is there some of that in Panama for you, or is it more business driven?
Well, my business is my life. So like I work 12, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. I have a home office, so it still allows me to spend lots of time with my family. But yeah, a lot of my things are business driven. But, talk cost of living. I have a huge 2-story penthouse apartment in downtown Panama, and it costs less than like a bachelor apartment would in Abu Dhabi or Dubai.
Yeah.
It's like I go out for restaurant meals 3 times, 4 times a week, and it costs nothing, and the food is amazing. We're right near the ocean. They grow anything and everything here because it's all volcanic soil. In Abu Dhabi, it's a desert. If the power goes out, like in the summertime, you're going to die. Like literally, it is plus 55 degrees Celsius. That's pretty terrible. If the power goes out here, it's like, okay, it's a little bit warm. It's like 29 degrees. It's not cold. Like I'm not a big fan of cold like Canada by any means, but there's lots of personal benefits here as well, for sure.
So your core business, you mentioned, there's something to do with tax. this,
Hmm.
right? So, Panama automatically associates for me with very good tax savings and a good place to be as an online entrepreneur. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, is for someone else considering a place in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So Panama has what's called Territorial Tax System. So for lots of other nationalities, if you live in the country, if you build your business there, you're going to be paying income tax. Now, in the United States, corporate tax rate is at 21%. Canada, with income tax, you could be paying anywhere around 40% of your income that would go out, depending on which bracket you're on. And there's a lot of caveats. But here in Panama, it's a territorial tax system, which means that if you earn your money outside of the country, you pay zero income tax. So all of my money is derived outside of the country. All my clients are from outside of the country. I have an online business. I pay zero tax here. That's a lot of extra money that I could put back into my business. I can take my family on vacation. I can use it to educate my daughter and help her and grow my family.
Is this personal or corporate tax that is territorial? Both?
Both. So, okay, I don't want to get too much into the exact tax rules because there's so many caveats. And if you want to get into taxation, you have to talk about the Americans and their tax on worldwide income, and then there's different ways around that. But understand that income tax from a personal level is zero if you earn your money outside of the country. So if you have investments, if you have an online business, if you have a pension or social security or any of these types of things, for Panamanian tax, you're paying zero. So that's pretty attractive straight off the bat. Here, there's only a 7% VAT. So in Canada, I think we have 13% right now between GST and HST. So it's nearly half of the sales tax that happens here in Panama. There's just a ton of other ones. There's zero employment tax, zero tax on, I can't remember all of them, like land transfer taxes or something like this. I would have to go and look them all up. But we deal more with the visa process, like with my business. I help people get a visa for Panama, Nicaragua, Belize, Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy, like a whole bunch of countries in Europe. We do the visa process. For a lot of the tax work, I refer them to a CPA who does that, and we have trusted partners that we work with that I've been working with for a long time, and my business partners I've been working with for, in some cases, decades. We want to make sure that we do everything legal, and it's not right for everybody. A lot of people think that if you just build your business overseas, you don't have to pay any taxes and you can still live in the United States or still live in Canada. That is not the case. It's against the law, and we do not do things like this. Just want to be very upfront about this. I have people who think because I work in the offshore markets that we do dodgy things or we skirt the law in any regard. Even though that I don't agree with tax in any shape or form, I'm a libertarian. I think tax is theft. I still follow the rules. I still follow the laws because basically I don't want to be thrown in a cage. I don't want to go to jail. So we're very, very strict about these things, about what we do and what we won't do and the type of consulting and the type of work we do. But philosophically, for me, it's terrible. That's kind of another long answer with lots of caveats to probably maybe a more simple question.
Yeah, government should just make their own money by running profitable businesses or something like that, Let them
absolutely.
own a little bit more than something, but, don't take from us. That's right.
Yeah. Government does not produce anything. People say, well, you have to give to the poor and you need to take care of the less fortunate. Great. I agree with you. But you can't do it at the end of a gun. You can't threaten my life and make me do things like this. And that's literally what happens with taxation. If you don't pay your taxes, they will send some goons there with guns and they will arrest you and they will throw you in a cage because they believe that they have more knowledge, they have a better understanding of what you should be doing with your money than you do. Now, in a lot of cases, all that money is just wasted on bureaucracy. It's embezzled, it's corruption, or it just goes to war and it just murders people. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not a pacifist. If someone punches me in the face, I'll turn around and punch him right back. I'll defend my family. but I'm never going to be taking an airplane, flying it halfway across the world and dropping bombs on little women and little children. This is wrong. It's always been wrong. It will always be wrong. There'll never be a point in human history where killing another person is right and good and patriotic. I have no patriotism at all. I'm totally against these types of things.
You're a very interesting person. So you've been to
I'm
many
very passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, you've been to many different countries. So in every country, did you do the same? Sort of find the circle of other expats that you became friends with? And there's many of them in each country?
I gravitate to places that have a large, strong expat community. Like in Melbourne, where I lived in St. Kilda. There was a huge expat community there, and lots of people coming and going, and lots of languages on the street, and food and culture and history. And I think this is the coolest thing in the world. Like I can find interesting things about anyone and everyone, and I just love to learn. I'm just a voracious learner.
What about Abu Dhabi? Was there a lot of expats living there as well?
Oh my God, the entire country is expats. Only 10% of the workforce is Emiratis. 90% of the workforce are expats. It is quintessentially like expat. It's the entire country just built on expats. Wow.
And I know that on your podcast you interview expats, so you have quite a lot of people potentially to interview then. It's just very interesting. So there's a question about your podcast.
I've interviewed Jim Rogers. I've interviewed Grant Cardone, who's not an expat but has moved all over the United States for tax reasons. I've interviewed John Perkins, who lived overseas and wrote The Economic Hitman. Lots of New York Times bestselling authors, CEOs, millionaires, decamillionaires. I've interviewed billionaires on my show, all with the focus of people who are building and investing overseas, building their businesses, investing overseas.
It's interesting that you interviewed a lot of influential, interesting people. So did any good partnerships come out of that? I'm curious because I'm new to podcasting.
Yes, absolutely. The business that I run right now is called Escape Artist. We are the largest and oldest offshore website in the world. I met my business partners who owned this site. I met them through the podcast and developed a relationship with them. You can check it out if you go to escapeartist.com. We deal, once again, with accounting and lawyers, like accounting and law work, immigration, private banking.
Escape Artist. Oh, I remember this website from a long time ago in the first days of starting to think of traveling somewhere. I don't know how long ago was this. Maybe 15 years ago. The ultimate guide of going offshore. Interesting. Let me check it out. So there's books section. Articles, podcast.
Podcast takes them to the Expat Money Show, to my podcast.
That's pretty cool. So you have a lot of good information here. So you took it over from the guys, right? You are the one running it right now?
Yep, it's my site. I partnered with them, so they're still my business partners, but I do all the editorial. We rank extremely well on Google. We get just a ton of people every day who read the stuff. We give everything away for free. The only thing we charge for are the services. So when you actually need to do the visa process, that's when you pay. All the information is free. We do have some books that, some ebooks that you can download, but it's one of those types of businesses where you provide value and you hope that people remember and I like this, how you're going through the website while we're talking. It's very cute.
So I'm just curious. So are you actually the writer here these days, or you hire others? Because I see very interesting topics.
These ones here by EA editors are guest blogs, but if you go down a little bit, you should see Mikkel Thorup and Mikkel Thorup and Mikkel Thorup and...
Okay, so you do add a lot, because there's people who acquire other businesses and they usually just vaguely put themselves in them, So I really like how you took over and you made it yours, the project. You're actually a writer and you are writing and contributing to the content.
Yeah, this is my background. I'm a writer. I write and I speak. That's what I do. But I put out probably 20,000 words, about 20,000 words a month, I would say. What's this on LinkedIn?
I see that you also an investor, right? So with 3,000 followers on what you post, that's great. So investor. So I know on your podcast, I didn't listen to the episodes, but I saw the titles that you were interviewed quite a few investors. So you probably are a very knowledgeable investor yourself. So what type of investing is this? Like where and what?
So I've invested in many things, from businesses to real estate to international real estate, stocks, bonds. I was a derivative trader for options for more than 7 years. Cryptocurrency, which I definitely do not suggest to people. Please do not invest in cryptocurrency unless you really know what you're doing. It's a surefire way to lose lots of money. And if you are going to invest, just invest in Bitcoin and forget all these silly little altcoins. I lost several $100,000 that way, so that's probably not a good investment. But we do quite well, and I've spent a lot of time educating myself and learning about these types of things. And plus, with the podcast, is an opportunity to learn. With something like 85 or 86 episodes, over the last 3 years, that's a lot of time learning from some of the best people in the world about investments and building businesses.
There's sense? One interesting thing that you said when I heard you talk. So I heard you talk at Cross Border Summit in China when I was visiting there as well. And I really liked the one thing that you said, that every person that you interview, you actually read up on him and learn about him. That's so intensely and so in depth that the person reveals more about themselves during the interview. So do you find that your questions are better that way and then you get the more valuable information, or is just to make the person feel more comfortable? Like, which one is that?
Well, I think it's not an A or B. I think it's A and B and C and D and A. So what I try to do is I try to show my guests a lot of respect. So I don't want to interview them and get them on the show and then just ask them the same questions that everybody else has asked them. A lot of these famous people, they've been interviewed 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. I've interviewed guys who have been interviewed more than 400 times, on national television. Like Jim Rogers has been interviewed for 40 years on CNBC and Squawk Box and all these investment programs. When I get him on the show, he said, okay, you've got like 20 minutes. An hour and a half later, and I'm still on the phone with him. Exact same thing with Grant Cardone. Certifiable billionaire. The guy owns something like 4,000 apartments in the United States. And he says, okay, you got 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Let's make this fast. Let's go. And an hour and a half later, and we're still chatting and laughing and stuff like that. Because this is really good stuff that no one else is asking him. And they're so surprised. I had a guy on the show. His name is Sean McFate. And he was part of the 22nd Airborne Division for paratroopers. And then when he left that, he became a mercenary and traveled through Africa and worked as a mercenary. And then he went and did his PhD in, I think it was in international economics and politics. And now he's a professor at Georgetown University and works for the State Department. This is like a super, super interesting guy. So he's wrote 4 books. So I read all 4 books in like 3 weeks to get ready for the interview. And I watched every other interview that he had done. I spent like 60 or 70 hours in a month just getting ready for this one 60-minute conversation with him. But man, oh man, like, it's really good. Like, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but it's really, really, really good. And I promise you, there's stuff in there that is not being talked about by anyone else. And these are often subjects that I don't know. I was never a mercenary in Africa. I was never a paratrooper. I never worked for the State Department. But here's an opportunity to talk to someone and learn from them. Now, I bring a lot of libertarianism and politics in. I wanted to understand some of these things. I wanted to understand the war with China and what's happening. And And because I spent this time educating myself beforehand, I could ask really intelligent questions. I think it's important. I think that a lot of times, people just sit down and they don't prepare and they miss opportunities that are presented to them. And, everyone has their own style of doing things. But for me, I like to be really, really well prepared. I have a page of notes. We have everything professionally edited. It's really a world-class show. Really is.
So you're saying you would vote for weekly podcast episode rather than daily show, just to have it better quality and having people to come back to you more.
Doing a weekly show at the quality that I do is already extremely difficult. If you were to do the show that I did as a daily show, I don't even think that would be possible. I would have no idea how that would be done. We spend in post-production, with the show notes, with everything, I couldn't even guess how many hours go into putting out one episode. And I have a small team of people who work for me. Everything is professionally edited by a guy in the UK. It has to be reviewed. I listen to it. My booking manager listens to it. If there's any changes they need to be made, we re-listen to it. Right now we're putting out monthly content because I'm doing so many words on the blog. Doing something like 20,000 words on the blog, which is, you can say a book is usually around 40,000 to 60,000 words would be a book. So I'm basically putting out 4 to 6 full-length books every year, and I put them all out for free.
It's interesting. Danny McMillan told me, find your medium. And I'm one of these jumpy people who try a little bit of everything, right? A little bit of podcasting, okay? Social media, TikTok, this, that. I was just like this, right? But Danny was talking to me and he told me that, Paulina, no, you have to find one and do that 90% of the time, and only 10% dabble in new things if you want, but still stick to that one. So what's that one for you? Is it writing or podcasting?
Okay, well, I agree with him, but I would also take one step back. You need to try everything that's out there so that you can have a better understanding of yourself, what you like to do. Now, how are you going to say, I don't like TikTok, I don't like Facebook, I don't like Twitter or YouTube or podcasting or blogs or books or this, if you've never tried them? If a lot of people out there are starting and they want to get into content marketing, my suggestion is try it all. Try it all. But don't expect that the result that you're going to get is going to build a massive business. You're not, but you need to have at least an understanding of yourself. And then from there, you can double down on that 1 or 2 things that are really, really important for you. For me, I started podcasting. That was one of the main things. Well, I kind of started writing and podcasting around the same times, but I don't see the differences too much between them. I'm on social media. I don't run my social media. I have a podcast, but I don't do my own audio editing. I don't write my own show notes. I don't do the website design or the graphic design. There's 100 things that I don't do, but that's why there's 7 of us in the business. And I have 7 people who stand behind me and support me and help me put out content and get my message across. We transcribe things. We take audio files from podcasts and we turn them into videos and they get put up on YouTube. So it's about repurposing things. Don't feel like you need to be a hero and do everything yourself. As an entrepreneur, it's about identifying that 1 or 2 things that you do really well, your core competencies, and doubling down on that. So I didn't choose 1, I chose 2. I write and I speak. And speaking on the podcast is the exact same for me as speaking on stage. So I travel around the world. I speak at conferences, exactly where we met. I was in Belize earlier this year as well. I've been all over the place. And I speak on stage and I tell my story and what I do and try to help people. And I think that's the genesis, is where you're coming at things from.
Hmm. It's interesting for me. I started maybe 3 businesses so far, and the first one failed. The second one was, sort of pulled together. The third one, shopkeeper, is very successful, but the processes was a problem. So uh, preparing it for selling or something like that, it would require so many stringing of the processes because it's not automated. I'm really curious how you do it in your business. Like the next one I'll start to myself, I promise. Everything will be process, 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 process. And from the sounds of it, sounds like you got it going very nicely with 7 people. This one doing that, this one doing that. So did it take you time to do it? Did you like learn over time how to do it, or is it still a mess? Like, oh, how is it going for you?
No, I think that my business is pretty well organized. I can't remember if it's Gerber who said, you build the processes and the processes run the business. And I really believe that. Um, all I do is set up systems, software, and if this, then that type of workflows. And for me, I try to automate everything. Now, whether I'm automating that with technology or I'm automating that with staff, doesn't really matter to me as long as I get it off of my plate. I try to just do the few things that are really good. So the writing and the speaking. Everybody knows my messaging. They know what I stand for. They know that I'm a libertarian. They know that what I've traveled and where I've lived overseas. They know my beliefs about government and about internationalization. They know my views on China. They know all these types of things. And then I give responsibility and I let people do their work. And I monitor. I watch what they're doing. I check in with them. I have everyone send me reports. I'm very data driven. I spend an immense amount of time building out the systems for Google Analytics, Data Console, Search Console, all the Google products. I'm big into, we run our entire business off the back of G Suite, which for me is super, super powerful. I think understanding processes and how these work is such a massive impact, will have a massive impact on your business. And this goes back to what we said before. Don't try to be a hero and do everything yourself. And I can give you an example. So this last month, we've been trying to set up a CRM program. And I know that the owners before me wanted to set up a CRM, and they tried and they failed, and they tried and they failed, and they did research and they failed. Me, I said, no problem, I'll take care of it. I went on Upwork. I found a consultant, an American guy, paid him $500. I was like, he took a 30-minute phone call with me. I said, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. This is what we've tried and didn't work. Give him 30 minutes of information. He came back a couple days later with a complete matrix on the best CRM programs out there, then made a little video, a demo on each one, signed up for a trial account. Then we said, okay, I want this one. He went in, he built the entire thing out for me, all the workflows, did everything, and handed it over.
I want this guy's name.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the type of mentality. I'm like, I don't want to be the one to go out there and start surfing the internet and try to read and research every different CRM program and make a best decision. This guy is an expert. That's all he does. He helps businesses set up CRM programs. So for $500 or $1,000, I got the whole thing done in a week. For me, that is money well spent. I'm not going to try to be a CRM expert or master. I just want a solution to a problem. That's all I care about. I don't care about understanding every little aspect and technical feature and getting bogged down with all the details and the techno mumbo jumbo. Very straight English. This is what I want. This is what I need. Can you help me? Yes. Okay, let's get it done. And I'll pay. A lot of people want to do everything themselves. They end up spending money on the wrong things for their business, or they try to save money where they should be spending money. I don't know. It's difficult to have a 60-minute conversation on how to fix a business. I can just give you a few tips. And for me, it is always worth paying for good information, for paying for expats, for experts, whether that's books, online courses, coaches, consultants, anything. I've been part of mastermind programs for marketing that I paid $15,000 to be a member of. For me, that was extremely worthwhile. A couple of days in a room talking to other marketers on how to build my business, because they have information that I want. I don't try to get all the information for free on the internet. That's how you end up at 4 o'clock in the morning sitting in your underwear reading about how to build a nuclear reactor out of like paper clips and glue, like you just fall down this rabbit hole and it's just so wild. Like go to the source, pay for the information, get rid of all the junk and the noise. Just go and get it done. Don't get distracted.
I'm the guy with the glue, definitely. When I was just recently looking for a CRM, so we've tried many before. We just use a spreadsheet, right? Google Sheets. But what I just Googled, so I was looking for it, I didn't even think of outsourcing to someone because nobody else can know what I want, right? So I just and found this Zoho creator. And just the Zoho creator is like a custom app builder, and I'm a software developer a little bit. So you just drag and drop the fields you want and basically creates your own software, and it's a subscription based. This is going to be like custom CRM, but now I'm dragging these fields and spending my time, and I just hear you saying that you just got it done with the guy. I'm like, oh, it's so good.
Well, okay, figure out the couple of things that are going to move your business in the right direction. So for me, it's doing interviews just like this. For me, this is a very good use of my time. This is not something I can outsource. I can't say, hey, Bob, go do that interview for me and pretend that you're Mikkel Thorup. It's not going to work, I have to do this myself. But I've been interviewed, I don't know, 50, 60, 80 times or something like that on other podcasts and newspapers and magazines and all of these different mediums. That, for me, moves the needle because now I can go out there and I can access your network. And your network, your followers, they either are going to love me or hate me. I really don't want the third thing, which is, hey, Mikkel's okay. I don't really go for that. I either go, you either love me or you hate me. If you're a libertarian and you believe that government is scumbags and thieves and murderers, then you're probably going to really like me. If you're a statist and you think like government owes us everything and we should get everything for free and free medical and free education and free universal basic income and I should just be able to sit on the couch and do nothing and contribute to nobody, then you're probably going to hate me right now. But that's okay, because if you hate me, then you're not going to be my client anyways. You're never going to give me money, so it doesn't really matter to me. What I want is that polarity. I want to be able to speak to people who I'm actually going to be able to help and influence their life. So for things like this, like an interview, that's well worth my time. Writing and putting out content on articles, newsletters, I send out a daily newsletter to tens of thousands of people every day who read this type of stuff, who come back day after day after day. It becomes a part of their life that they read my content. That for me is worthwhile. Me researching 50 different CRM programs and figuring out how the workflows work and what functions I need and what I don't, that's not worth my time. That's not going to move the needle. I'll spend the $1,000 and pay someone else to do it. That's his business. He's the expert. That makes sense for him to do it. That moves his needle, but it's not mine. Spend money on your business. Understand that you can't do everything for free. If you try to, you will never be successful. No one will. You got to invest in your business, and it comes with working with professionals.
Oh, that sounds so good. Thank you so much for everything you said today. Yes. I love to interview you. I could do another hour, 2, 3, 5, 4, but the time is over. So if people want to connect with you and work with you, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. You can either go to expatmoneyshow.com. There's places to subscribe literally all over the website. We're on Stitcher Radio. We're on, there we go, expatmoneyshow.com. Perfect. So Stitcher Radio, iTunes, Google Podcasts, pretty much everywhere that you could ever imagine. The podcast is there. So you can go to the website and you can subscribe, or you can go to those platforms and type in expatmoneyshow.com. There you go, right there. Android, Stitcher Radio, everything like that. So that's number one. Number two, go to escapeartist.com. You'll find most of my writing there. You can also subscribe to the newsletter. Like I said, I put out a ton of content. Content is king. And after that, I encourage you to go to Amazon. My book, and we didn't have a chance to discuss it really today, but my book is called, Let's wait for you here.
Expat something, right?
Yes. Oh, look at that. Recently viewed. Expat Secrets. It's coming up on the first page.
That's
there
right.
We go.
Expat Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So is that an experience book, or is that some strategy book or tax related? Like, what is it about?
Yeah, it's a general overview for anybody who wants to move overseas and live their life in a more tax efficient manner. We talk about second passports, the residency, digital security, the languages. It's kind of like an overall picture. Now, from this, there's tons of links in there that will take you to additional resources, to podcasts, to other free material, to newsletters, to websites. So it really goes comprehensive. The book is meant to take really difficult subjects and make them really, really easy. I want this to be easily understood by anybody. If it is your very first time moving overseas or dealing with the offshore markets or being an expat, this makes perfect sense for you. Even if you have lived overseas for a long time, I still get comments from people who said this book has helped them just a ton. So I definitely encourage you to take care, to pick that up as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming to my show. Looking forward to meeting you again somewhere in the world.
Absolutely. Next time, maybe next time I'm in Europe or something like that, I'll pop by Turkey again and come see you.
Cool. Sounds good. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, Paulina.